the new standard in performance and safety. At $35,490 fully equipped and 7-year warranty, the all-new MG HS is value you've never seen before.
Damian Martin, big thank you, mate, for joining me on Gibbo Goes One-on-One, driven by the famous MG. Mate, how you doing? First of all, massive congrats, mate, on obviously the retirement, but one hell of a career.
Yeah, it's been a crazy week. Obviously, I've known for a while I was going to be retiring, but to finally knock it out. Actually, you're one of the few people I told ages ago, so I appreciate you keeping that to yourself when you asked me to come on. About a month ago now, 6 weeks ago, I was like, the club's asked me not to do anything, because at that time I was about to make the announcement, and then I told the media guy a couple of days later, I was like, nah, not quite ready. So I delayed it twice. Wasn't changing my mind. I knew what I had to do, but finally got up there, said the words, and yeah, it's been a big few days since.
Look, I'm trying to boost my podcast, and that would have been one hell of an exclusive to pump that out before you announced it with Perth. But I don't even think that would be a good move. Is it kind of set in yet, or it's early days, but and obviously we aren't playing basketball, but it probably won't until the season starts. But is it kind of set in that you've retired and you won't be playing basketball anymore?
Yeah, I think because I started doing real estate outside of basketball, 18 months ago, not a whole lot for me has changed, other than now I get to wake up and there's no rush to get out of the house because there's no weights. So I've noticed that, and you do, kind of drift away from the guys naturally. So instead of seeing them every day, now it's just a text message here and there. So I've noticed small things, but it really hasn't sunk in. And like you said, I think once, there's the first game and I'm heading to RAC Arena as, part of the Red Army opposed to being a player, that's when it'll sink in. And I'm excited to witness it as a supporter, but I'd rather be out on the court, and nothing will change that.
What was the main reason why? Was it, obviously you've had a lot of injuries, which I'll touch on in a minute, but was it just kind of time you felt it, you wanted more time with your family, the body was kind of really starting to give in? What was the main reason, I guess, why you chose to retire? Because I'm sure you could bang out 15 to 20 games and do enough to help your team win still, but obviously there's more going on. Yeah,
so it was an injury. So the start of last season, I was off contract. I asked for a 2-year deal. The club gave me one. So the end was pretty near, it was coming up regardless. But then when I had an injury actually playing South East, I think it was round 4 here in Perth, I felt something happen. And then, didn't know the severity of it until we played 3 games on the road after that. That's why I couldn't get an MRI straight away. And by the time we were playing New Zealand in New Zealand, it was very, very painful. And then, the MRI showed there was a tear, and a significant tear that, wouldn't be fixed by simply going into a moon boot. So, the first surgeon I met with, he literally said, this is your career-ending injury. Let's book you in for next week. So I've known for a long time it was going to happen. But even if I hadn't had the injury, it was probably only 1 more, maybe 2 more seasons maximum left in this old body.
Now, I'm sure there's a lot of injuries we don't know of. I think you had some Achilles, some calf issues. Everyone's seen the finger pop out at Melbourne Arena. You just pop back in and go back out. There it is. You've got hands like Brian Gorgon. That's awesome. That'll never change. And the biggest one, as far as I can see, is that the broken jaw. I seen you had surgery 4 years later. Was that the most painful one to go through? Obviously, being your face and being able to eat and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it was. Obviously, had to start eating through a straw for a few weeks, so it was more of an inconvenience than actual pain. The jaw one. Funny enough, it's kind of the ligaments and the tendons when you do those that are way more painful than any broken bones. So, yeah, probably the Achilles. Actually, no, sorry. In saying that, I got hit in the ribs the day after I did the Achilles against LaMelo. And the worst thing was it was my foul as well, a straight block. So fouls against me. I've got a busted rib, and then shooting, passing for the rest of the season. That was the most inconvenient injury I've had. But as far as sheer pain, probably my right ACL, the recovery from my right knee years and years ago, that sticks with me as the most painful one.
So it's fair to say there's not too much left on your body that you haven't broken. You can literally work your way from all the way up and just keep going to the head.
Yeah, so it starts with, 12 weeks with a little toe injury, which I get no sympathy from because it's a little toe, but 12 weeks of movement from there to, 2 left Achilles reconstructions, right Achilles tear, right ACL reconstruction, left MCL tear, 4 broken wrists. Got to really learn how to take a charge without falling back probably. So 4 broken wrists, 4 shoulder surgeries, 3 broken jaws, yeah, and then just busted fingers. I'm definitely not going to be a hand model, as we've already stated. So thanks a lot, Gorge. I'll join your club.
Well, that's a lot that I had no idea about. Obviously, 4 shoulder surgeries, 2 knees. Like, that's just a whole bunch. Like, what? I'm sure there would have been times where you're like, man, why am I playing this sport? Like, why am I doing it? Like, what kind of kept you going through all that? Like, someone could have stopped after one of those injuries, but that's like 10 different more surgeries that are just crazy to even hear.
Yeah, it's a little depressing, actually, because a lot of the questions, because as you know, you go through an injury, the second you get back on court, you're like, yeah, it's all been worth it. The second you get subbed into a game, first game back, you're like, oh, it's all been worth it. So you forget about it and move on. But then when you retire, and there was a thing in the West Australian where it went through my body parts and labelled most of the ones I'd heard, I'm like, oh, that is, yeah, I should have studied more in school and not played sport. And I think my body was trying to tell me something. But yeah, at the time, you know, you hurt a lower part of your body, so you focus on getting your upper part better, including your head. You injure your shoulders or get shoulder surgery, work on your legs, and then the sports psychology side of it. So there's always ways to get better, but that doesn't take away from how frustrating it is, how painfully slow it can be. And then this year in particular, you know, wanting to do one thing, but then physically not being able to do it, it's probably been the most frustrating season to boot, but it was worth it in the end.
How was, actually, I'll get to that later. So I'm sure you've heard these numbers in these stats a million times, but 342 games at West Sydney, Sydney Spirit and Perth. Champions in 10, 14, 16, 17, 19, 20. Defensive player 2011 to 15 and 18. First team, first NBL team 2011. Out of all that, what would be your greatest NBL achievement, you think?
The first championship's always was the most fun. Just kind of unexpected or so tight that season. You know, it literally came down the last round to determine top 5 and minor premiers. So that was probably the most fun. But if there's one I have to say is the most special, it's that year where we brought in Bryce Cotton with about 8 games to go. I think we had to win the last 6 games just to qualify for the finals and win the championship. Literally, as the confetti was still falling, one of the things the journalist said to me was, how does it feel to win a championship when on Christmas morning you woke up last on the ladder? And that year there was injuries, there was pressure that, you know, within Perth there was talk of, you know, is this the worst Wildcats team of all time? And the finals streak is going to be over. So that roller coaster that year was just, you know, the extremes. But then to cap it off with a championship. And you know, I mentioned Bryce. One of my 2 favourite things about that championship was, one, he went for 45 points in the grand final, but what's better is it was Mitch Norton that was guarding him. And I say guarding because he dropped 45 on him, so I love bringing that up. But the second thing is, like, Bryce, like I said, he got brought in with 8 games to go. He was sitting, you know, low part of the ladder, and he got offered a 10-day contract with an NBA team. And, you know, 99.9% of the players around the world are going to jump at any opportunity to get into the NBA. Yeah. Instead, he said no to that and, you know, stuck to his contract, stayed true to what he said he'd do for the club, and got us to a grand final and went on to win MVP. So, yeah, that just blows my mind, but that speaks volumes to who he is as a person and a character.
He would have to be the best teammate you play with, like on-court performance and whatnot. Like, he'd have to be right up there. Like, I'm assuming the prime Kevin Lish would be, you know, kind of close. But as far as what Bryce can do, just win a game at will, like, is he the best player you've played with personally? Yeah, definitely. His skill level is just incredible. And it's one thing to be super skilled, but then to be able to perform night after night after night, knowing you're going to get double teams, you're going to have switches, you're going to have people denying you, bumping you. You know, there's one clip we've got where we're playing the Kings and he literally had 4 guys guarding him. But, you know, that's the type of attention he gets. But then he can still put on the performance of dropping 30, but then making his teammates better because he's still unselfish. He's the most unselfish scorer I've ever played alongside. But yeah, you mentioned Kevin Lish. Like, if I had to go a starting 5 of teammates, and I probably shouldn't do this because I'm going to leave someone off and I'll regret it at the end. But Kev Lish, Bryce Cotton, they'd be on my backcourt in a heartbeat. Then I guess James Ennis, Sean Redditch, and probably Matty Knight. But when you get to say those names, and it means you left out. Well, I got my first year I played with Martin Catalini and Paul Rogers, absolute legends, like Jesse Wagstaff, Casey Prather. Yeah, played alongside some really good players, but Bryce is number 1. Yeah, I mean, I think we tried to guard him with 4 people one time as well. It didn't work out very well at all. I haven't been guarded in 2 years. It's been great ever since we played. Like, I used to get sagged off. Now I'm just not guarded at all. It's brilliant. Is there a harder shot to shoot than when no one's, like, I always think, like, man, if I was left open, I'd be able to make so many shots. But I would assume it probably plays into your mind a little bit when there's no one around and you're just wide open. Like, is that harder to shoot than someone kind of half closing out?
Yeah, well, because I'll be like, sweet, open shot, and I'll be like, miss. I'm like, ugh. But sometimes I'm like, I still believe there was a better shot. So it's like you're in a lose-lose situation. You miss it, and everyone's like, it's an open shot, you should have made it. But if you turn it down because you genuinely believe you can drive in and kick it to someone else in a better position, they're like, no, you should have shot that one, mate. So yeah, it's a funny one that unless you make it, you've made the wrong decision.
I notice you like to give a lot of your teammates a lot of grief on your Instagram. There's so many pictures of Greg with bandages on his head and like broken noses, and Bryce likes to wear his own sock at practice from time to time.
He will self-promote, but no, I mean, as you know, that the best part about it is the mateship, that day-to-day banter and game day. They're the two things I'll miss the most. And there's actually Mika, I heard once say, you should play for the 2 R's, rings and relationships, and he's spot on. So play to try and win as many championships as possible, but on the day-to-day basis, push each other to get better, but enjoy the brotherhood.
I'm glad you stole my question. I was going to ask later the rings and relationships that I did have, but that's what it's about, right? Obviously, you guys are two, like, I think Mick has won 5 championships, maybe 4 or 5. Like, you've obviously won 6, but you think it's the stuff that the relationships you build, the people you meet, like you said, the practices, the road trips, that stuff that you'll probably miss the most? Yeah,
definitely. And the third R I'd add to that is relish every moment. And because I knew I was going to have to retire for most of the season, even like it took me a while to get over that. But then when I, accepted it, it just meant I could go into training and stuff I probably took for granted. I start, really enjoying, like, the banter would have it warm up, the competitive nature once we're on the court, and then stick around a little bit longer at lunch or a little bit longer on the road to talk to someone instead of just taking off or whatever. So yeah, you just get a greater appreciation of how good of a sport it is, how good of an environment it is. So yeah, you're spot on that. For me, it's all about those things.
Obviously, the Wildcats have been at the top for a long time. Like 30-something finals appearances. Like, what makes Perth so great? Like, I feel like you guys have won a whole bunch because you've kept your core group together. I don't know what goes on behind the closed doors, but you've kept that group and then you've brought in pieces that clearly just fit into your system and what you guys want. Is that what has made Perth so great for so long, or is it whatever's going on behind the scenes, or is there any one thing that you think, like, this is why you should come and play with Perth?
Yeah, I think it's a number of things. Obviously, you got playing in front of 13,000 things is a huge motivator, but most of the games won between Monday and Thursday on the training court. So I remember playing in Sydney, absolutely loving it, playing for, the mighty West Sydney Razorbacks into the Sydney Spirit in front of 300 people. But I loved playing in Sydney and would never have left had, our owner not handed the license back to the league. But that opened the door to, I was off contract. Bevo got a job in Perth and I came out with him. And that's when I realised, there's a big difference between being a professional athlete, you just get paid to do it, it's a profession, and trying to be an elite athlete. And that's where it took me seeing what Sean Redditch did every single day. He was incredible. He was lifted hard at weights, then he'd go work on his game before training, train hard, stick around for another 45 minutes, work on his game, ice bath, stretching, diet was impeccable, sports psychology, visualization, like all those cliche 1%ers you hear about, he did every single day, not just, when the media were there, not just after a loss, not just before finals, every single day for the, the 9 or 10 years we were teammates. And because he was our best player and he did it, even though he wasn't a verbal leader, we just watch it and be like, okay, if he's doing it, we better. And so we did. And that's when I realized that professionally is either just show up and tick the boxes and then leave, or you can try and be elite like Sean and do whatever it takes. Clearly my battery's about to die, so I'm just going to walk over here and get my charger. But that's what develops culture, because Sean did it, so 3 or 4 other guys did it. He probably learned it from Paul Rogers, who was the captain when he came in. And then if you're a new kid into town, you better do it. Otherwise you're going to fall away and you won't have a long career at the Wildcats. But that's a part of it. And then the support you get from the coaching staff, the front office, so on and so forth. It all goes together.
I'm assuming the guys you just spoke of, those older guys that have been there and done it and set that standard, if a young kid's not coming in and doing what's expected, I'm assuming he gets a bit of a kick up the bum and like just kind of falls in line and just does what he should be doing to be the best that he can be.
Exactly right. And Trev's always been huge on, like, you can always expand your role, but you've got to start by accepting it and understanding it. So if you do the work, if you come in, to be a part of that jigsaw puzzle that you spoke about, and it's not necessarily scoring, but you want to develop your scoring touch, then go for it. Work on your shooting, work on this, that, and the other. But if you were recruited to pick up full court, defense, turn them twice, try and get deflections, be vocal, you'd better do that every day, and then you can work on the other stuff. So it's understanding your role, because, you don't need 12 scorers. We brought in Bryce, Nick, Matty Knight, Catalini, all these scorers over the year. That was their job. It's knowing what your role is and not trying to just do all the things that get the biggest applause.
And obviously you guys do a lot in the community. I remember, I don't know if I was talking to you or Jesse on an Aussie trip, but the promo hours you guys commit to, that's probably why you have 13,000, fans and members come to every game, which is amazing. But it's also, the nights that you guys have, the breast cancer night for obviously Trevor's partner and whatnot. I've seen the bingo nights you go out and do and have some fun at. A lot of stuff you do in the community for charities and whatnot. That obviously helps as well to build up, just not just on the court, but around the city as well.
Yeah, literally the day you meet Jack Bendad, he tells you got to be number one, and you kind of laugh, and it's a bit awkward. He goes, "No, seriously, you got to be number one," and he means that on the court, trying to win championships, but then also in the community. So we've got to do 300 hours in the community, so whether it's school visits, hospital visits, bingo nights, retirement villages, they're the most intense. I remember once trying to be funny, and then fourth number into it, I'm like, legs 11, all this stuff, and they're like, shut up and just call the numbers. I was getting heckled from some 80-year-old, sorry, mate. But no, it's all that stuff that does add up, and that's why, you get to play in front of so many people, and it doesn't matter how many games you play at home. With 14,000 people wearing red, you never get sick of it, and you still get goosebumps after a big play's made and you hear them.
Now, anyone that knows you knows you're a pretty forgetful guy. You can lose stuff pretty easily. Rumor has it that over an amount of time, I'm not sure how long, but you lost pretty much all your training gear, and guys would have it and they would wear it to practice, and you still had no idea that they were wearing your gear.
Yeah, I don't know who you've been talking to. They decided they'd set me up because I used to live with Brad Robbins, and we'd be driving to school. And then I lived near Greg Hire. And then might have been Greg, we're driving to training one day. And because I was so forgetful, I'm in the morning I'd wake up, I forgot to wash my clothes, my jersey last night. So I'd quickly throw it in the wash. It'd still be wet. And I'd hang it between my window, at the top of the window out the car. And then I'd do something silly like press the down on the window to get some air. And so these jerseys would go flying onto the freeway here in Perth, out the window. And then after I lost that one and then I lost another one, the guys thought it'd be funny that after training, when I take it off, they just quickly steal the next 2 or 3. So I think we get 5 jerseys at the start of the year. And about 4 weeks into pre-season, I can't find any of them. And Bev, I think it was Bev at the time, was like, mate, this is ridiculous. You need to grow up, take accountability, take responsibility. And everyone's laughing. Why is everyone laughing? Because we're starting to warm up. And 4 guys are wearing Martin 53, and I was completely oblivious to it, just cursing out the world, saying, I don't know where they are, mate. But yeah, I've brought it on myself because I do tend to forget things.
I'll get to a couple of your teammates there later, but I'm assuming, obviously you're a family man now, your wife, Britt, and your 2 daughters, Maggie and Bonnie. You'd probably get in trouble if you didn't say this was the most rewarding, biggest achievement that you've ever had, is producing 2 beautiful young daughters. Is that the highlight of your life? Obviously basketball is a big part of it, but is that what you're most proud of, your 2 little daughters? Yeah,
definitely. So Brittany was 38 weeks pregnant when I was over at the Rio Olympics. And so I was a nervous wreck. We came home and then, she ended up going to 42 weeks. And then finally we had to get induced to get Maggie out. But that moment where she was delivered after, 24 hours, 28 hours in the hospital, that was the best moment of my life. It was just incredible to experience that for the first time and then relive it, obviously with Bonnie 18 months later. And basketball's been a huge part of their life. Maggie literally to this day still introduces herself as Maggie Martin from the Perth Wildcats. So, every time we drive past the arena, she says that's Wilbur's house because it was the name of our mascot. She's got photos of the cheerleaders on the wall because she idolised them. So, she's got Nordo and Bryce are her favourite players. It's just cool that she is at that age where she loves the games, loves my teammates, and being able to pick them up after a game, take them down on the court and give my teammates high five. That's the type of stuff that, you just realise how lucky you are to be a professional athlete, but more importantly, a dad.
It'll be probably tougher for her then once the season comes around and Dad's sitting in the crowd next to her instead of running around on the court. She'll probably be all confused and wonder what you're doing sitting there.
What would have been worse was if Bryce did leave. That would have really broken a heart. So, yeah, no, we'll still go to the games, but she'll be trying to get on court, and I don't think I have that pull anymore.
Now, I mean, you and myself, we've had this with the Aussie team. We've battled being in the same position for probably 6 or 7 years. We both made the World's team 2010 in Turkey. I got London, Spain, and then you got Rio, Com Games. Like, talk me through obviously the disappointment of missing out on a major tournament like London, but then on the flip side of making the team in Rio. Because I know, like, obviously I made London and didn't know any better, but then the Rio thing was a real kick in the guts. But just talk me through the not making to making it the next time around.
Yeah, you know exactly that. It's just, I know you're saying the complete extremes doesn't really give it full credit for how much it did affect me. So London, yeah, one of the last ones cut, absolutely devastated, been a lifelong dream. And when I got cut, you know, I just felt like, to be honest, a complete failure, a loser. I questioned my love for the game, my ability in the game. And it was the off season at the time. So it's not like I woke up and had that routine of go to training, see the guys, you know, they put a smile on your face. Instead, I just it affected me mentally. And I lived that way for a few months. I was like I was living with a hand directly in front of my face, and all I could see was words on the hand were like failure, loser, yada, yada, yada. And after a few months of that, what kicked me out of that was I got a call from mum, and she had told me that dad had been diagnosed with prostate cancer. And then I realised, how selfish have I been living this way when something real was going on in the world and serious. And so I was still upset by it, but I changed all my goals to how can I be a better son? How can we help dad from afar? How can I be a better friend after neglecting everyone? And then I literally just changed all my goals from trying to, you know, make an Olympic team and, you know, 20 other goals to, at my age, just try and win as many championships as possible. And whether it's because I just simplified my goals, you know, I started enjoying the game a bit more. And yeah, come Rio, it was almost, you know, just unexpected. And then, you know, sitting there in front of Luke Longley, Andre Lemanis, Trevor Gleeson. And then when Andre finally said, they told each other, they said to each other, let's make it sound like we're going to cut him. And then we're like, no, he's made it. So when Luke opened the door for me pacing up and down this hallway at Melbourne Hotel, all right, mate, come on in. I've known him for a long time. He didn't make eye contact, didn't smile. I'm like, this is horrible. Get in there, shake their hands and get the hell out of there. Wish him the best of luck. But then, yeah, Andre ended up saying, we're going to take you. And in that moment, it was the best moment of my life. And I went to give, you know, Luke a bear hug and pick him up at his 140 kilos. I barely budged him. Gave him all a bear hug. But then I called Brittany, and seeing her reaction, you know, that then became the best moment of my life. The only thing that beat that was when I finally got to call mum and dad and tell them. And it was the best moment of my life up to that point. And then the games themselves, you know, as you know, they don't disappoint. Every time I saw the 5 rings, I'm taking photos. Every time I saw an athlete I admired, I was taking photos. The national pride everyone had, the Aussies wear green and gold for 2 weeks, Spaniards in red, Kiwis in black. There's so much to it. And I haven't even spoken about the basketball itself, which is the best part. So, no, it was the complete extremes. A dream come true to be able to, you know, wear the green and gold in the Olympics. But also the toughest moments of my life was when I got cut and how I probably handled that.
There's so much to take in at the Olympics. Like, you don't want to be a fan. It's hard not to be a fan, but you don't want to be a fan. Like, there's so much to do and see, but obviously you've got to be locked into the games because you're playing for the whole 2 weeks. And, you know, they say, you know, don't go to the opening ceremony because you've got to play the next day or whatever, and like all that stuff. But I mean, the opening ceremony is something that I remember like it was yesterday, like walking out and doing that whole thing. All those kind of moments, I'm assuming you won't probably ever forget. Yeah,
the opening ceremony was a huge highlight. And like you said, we were playing France first game up. Big game for us because obviously you got to finish top 2 in the pool. And so there was that pressure of who's going to march, who isn't. And then I remember just talking to Bainesy, and Bainesy was great. You know, we were rooming together, and he goes, I would have regretted had I not marched, you know, at London. Yeah. And so just hearing that from a guy that I know was going to then be playing 30 plus minutes the next night, you know, as his second campaign, I was like, yeah, I'm doing it. So then the staff was amazing in limiting how much time we're actually going to be on our feet. But yeah, walking out, you know, into the crowd, hearing the roar once Australia was named, curtains drawn, everyone in their blazers. Yeah, it's pinch me stuff. Like, still get goosebumps thinking about it. And it is one of the first things I think of when I hear the name, you know, the Olympics.
Did you get to meet anyone? Was there a specific moment other than that you were like, man, this is unreal? I remember chasing Usain Bolt down when we were going to shoot with Marty Clark. Like we chased him down and got photos with him at the bus. Like, was there anyone you kind of remember meeting or taking photos with, or, you know, kind of anything like that?
Yeah, I remember when I first got in the village, I'm taking photos of everything. Like I was out of control. And I think it was Paddy, actually. It might have been his third Olympics by then. And he's just like, I just settle down, mate. Like, you're here for 2.5 weeks. But then the next morning we're at breakfast and I see Dow putting bread in the toaster, and I'm like, Paddy, just one more photo. So I went and like tried to brush shoulders with Rafa. But that was awesome. You saying like seeing him was really cool. Going to the swimming, seeing Phelps, and then going out and supporting the other Aussies. The best moment as far as being a spectator was actually the women's rugby sevens. The Aussies won. It was incredible. They beat the Kiwis, and I'd never seen it until that point. But then the women's team that had just lost, they went and stood in front of their part of the crowd, the Kiwi women, and started doing the haka. And then the men in that section stood up and just started doing versions of the haka back to the women, with like grown men with tears streaming down their cheeks. And, you know, we were just in admiration. We were just all clapping. It was just a really cool moment to be a part of.
You say the rings and relationships, it's the relationships and moments that I remember. So you've been in a lot of pressure situations, right? Talk me through being on a bus or on a plane, 4 or 5 teammates, usually on the Boomers. I know you guys play in Perth a little bit, holding a couple of cards to play a game called drops, which is you drop and you hold or you win, whatever it is. But when there's a bunch of cash sitting in there, I'm not talking like NBA money, but enough to make you sweat. The pressure on whether you drop those cards or whether you hold them.
It's some of the most nervous parts of my life have been on the plane playing drops. So it's a game that's been passed down. So we haven't played for a while at the Wildcats, but we're literally talking like 10 cents a hand type of thing that can build up. When it was, you know, what we're doing, you know, $1 or whatever it was a hand, it adds up. Yeah, there was some very, very nervous times. Because you're right, I'm looking over to my left, I'm like, well, he's on 5 million. I'm looking over to my right, I'm like, he's earned 50 million. Here I am, you know, just I get caught up in the moment. I don't want to see what the overall balance is. I know I would have lost more than I won, but the fun we had in those moments. Matty Nielsen and I still laugh about some of those, you know, long plane rides and how much fun we had on it, but how we'd never do it again.
It's a pressure of not wanting to drop and concede your hand. I think the competitive side of you that comes out when you should bail out of this hand and just wipe them clean. But it's the competitive nature to not give up and not let go of those cards that I think keeps you in the game. But I remember I had to get out of there. I remember watching games where I was like, whoa, like the pressure and the sweat build up that just sitting there watching. So I can imagine being actually in the game.
Oh man, I haven't thought of that game for a long time. It was, yeah, a lot of fun, but so nerve-wracking. And what was I thinking in hindsight?
Now this was our great friend Daniel Kickett brings this up. I'm going to set the scene for this one, a PG version, of course. But before London, we went to London for a pre-tournament. We'd been away for a while. We had camp. Tough trip, tough routine, like tough schedule, a lot of games would finish, and I think we're moving on to maybe France or somewhere and went out for a little bit. And that next morning there was a knock on the door, and I want you to walk me through a little bit of what happened next from the knock on the door. Because Paddy and myself, we got the knock. I think you and Kicks got the knock, forgot to set the alarm, and then
we had been out the night before, and you know, it escalated a little bit. And then, yeah, so we slept through our alarm. We were like at 6 a.m. We got to leave, be on the bus to the airport. So in that moment, when that knock was on the door, we're frantic. We're like, just lost, like, doing whatever we can to pack the bags. But then the only thing that saved us, and I've probably never thanked you and Paddy, was the fact that you guys were late, because Paddy, you two were stars of the team, like all this. And so we can just hear Paddy getting yelled at while Kicks and I, like at one stage, when they came in, the first thing Kick had actually said was, I'm good, I'll catch the next flight. We're like, Kicks, wake up, mate. Like, you're with the Boomers. You're not just at home right now. And so, yeah, we got on the bus, and I was in that much of a rush and not quite with it, that I got to my seat. I looked down, and I'm wearing one casual shoe and one basketball shoe. And actually, I don't think I noticed till we got to the airport. So, yeah, that was one of the more
I'm pretty sure you had like a Nike Kobe on your left foot and like a Converse something on the other foot. Oh, I think what saved us though was Brett Brown was our coach and he was with the Spurs, and Paddy was obviously Paddy. So I think, Paddy was like, oh, let's go apologise. So we went and apologised after that, and it was all good. But
Brett gave me one of those talks where he came up to me when we finally got to Spain later that day. And it's not like he had a go at me, but when he walked away, that was the ultimate, I'm not mad, I'm just upset chat. And that cuts you. That really cuts you, especially coming from someone like Brett. So
that is the worst. I've been over what you think you'll miss most. That's, probably the relationships and the banter, I guess, you get with your teammates. You talked about your real estate stuff. That's something you've been doing for how long now?
Yeah, so I did a course about 2 years ago, and then upon passing the course and becoming certified, I joined a real estate agency. Probably a month or two after that. So it was weird going from training shirt and singlet and shorts to putting a suit and tie on and heading over there. So I'm a part owner of the agency now, and I do enjoy it. I genuinely enjoy it. But yeah, it's funny. Even in those early days for the last 18 months, you just go to training the next day going, yeah, this is a dream job. As much as I'm enjoying this other one, bouncing a ball for a living, let's not take it for granted.
Rumour has it you may have done an open house on game day. Is that?
No open houses on game day. But the worst is if we had a home open the day after a loss. There I would, work together. Jonathan and I'd be out the front taking names and numbers, standing next to a corny signboard with me smiling in front of the house. And then I'll be taking a name and number, and they'd come up and be like, wait, you play for the Wildcats. And then if we've ever lost, they'd give me all the coaching advice in the world. And then eventually they'd go into the house and pretend, hopefully buy it. But yeah, that was, it was funny juggling the two at the time, but ended up doing it for the last 18 months.
Is that obviously, what you want to do, or like, obviously you're a super smart player. You have been for your whole career. Have you been approached? Like, is coaching somewhere you think you want to be at, or is this doing that's not really of interest? Maybe coming in from time to time, but I would assume that you'd be a really good coach to work with the guards and teach people actually how to play defense and all that stuff. So is that something you might look to go down, or are you happy and content being a real estate guy?
Yeah, at this stage of my life with two kids, a wife and a mortgage, Trevor Gleeson was coach of the year in Townsville, moves to Melbourne because his wife gets diagnosed with breast cancer. 6 games in, he gets fired. He didn't lose his skill as a coach, but that's just how ruthless coaching can be. You win, they credit players; lose, they blame the coach. So I don't want to be in that type of atmosphere and be up and moving. I love Perth and don't want to leave. So yeah, I'm really enjoying real estate. There's a foundation that I've been working with where we go up to the Pilbara and work in Indigenous communities, and that's always been brilliant, but as one-off trips, whereas it looks like they've got the funding now to make that a bit more full-time. So I'm looking forward to being a part of that more. And then I love the challenge of learning something. For so long it was about X's and O's and how am I going to guard this guy or try and score against that opponent. Instead, learning about investments in the gold mines and capital raising and things like that. I'm really interested in it because I think it's new, and so just setting new goals that are completely away from a basketball court, I'm genuinely excited by and enjoying right now. But in saying all that, basketball is a part of who I am, so I dare say at some stage I'm going to put my hand up for coaching gigs, whether it's for Bonnie and Maggie's basketball teams or whether it's for something a bit more serious.
The Defensive Player of the Award, obviously you've owned that thing for a long time. Obviously you've done a lot in the game, but to now have that award named after you, that must tickle the heartstrings a lot, knowing that that's now your award. Obviously there's not a lot of people that get awards named after them, but how was that finding out that they were naming that award after you? Yeah,
it was pretty crazy because I had the press conference. I was a bit emotional in the car and didn't want to read any texts or take phone calls, just wanted a bit of downtime. So I gave my phone to Maggie and she was watching the Wiggles. And then when we got into the driveway at home, she handed me the phone because it started ringing. And I answered, but I was getting my other daughter out of the car, so I wasn't really paying attention. And I'm like, I could recognize the voice, but I just didn't know who it was at the time. I didn't hear them introduce themselves. And as I'm literally holding Bonnie, someone goes, yeah, so if you ever need help with real estate, let us know. We'll do whatever we can. But I just wanted to, so I'm thinking it's a buyer or a seller. And then he goes, just wanted to let you know we're going to name the NBL Defensive Player of the Year award after you. I'm like, sorry, who is this? And as I was saying, I'm really sorry, Jeremy, is that you, mate? And so, yeah, as the NBL commissioner, and here I am thinking I'm about to get a listing. So, no, I was over the moon. Like, it's one of those things you don't even think about it, to be honest. And then when it actually happens, you're like, how amazing is that? And then when I thought about it more, it's kind of cool that obviously the MVP award's named after Andrew Gaze. And I remember just a throwaway comment he made years ago where he said, good offense will always beat good defense. And I do agree with that, but I was always motivated to try and prove the point that maybe great defense beats great offense. And so, yeah, for him, he probably never remembers it, but for me, it stuck with me as like, nah, I'm going to prove he's wrong.
You've read my mind, because that's what I was about to say next, that quote that Gazy threw out there. My source has been awesome with his information. But that's like, obviously you've had some, a skill set, quick, strong, move really well across the court, but it's that mindset of, I'm assuming, just wanting to shut people down, taking things personally to not let someone score, that has probably given you, the award and made you the defensive player you are.
Yeah, you never want to be the reason that someone scores, the other team scores. So whether you're not there on help defense, whether you get blown by off the dribble. And I love the idea of making someone beat you at least twice before they either get an open shot or drop off to someone. And I stole that. Well, Darnell Me, I remember playing in maybe my rookie year or my second year. And, he was just about to retire himself. And I remember getting past him twice off the dribble. And then twice he got back in the play and blocked my shot. And after that game, I was like, that's awesome. Not once did he give up. He got back in. Well, it's not awesome. I got stuff thrown. But I was like, that's the type of defender I want to be, where you can't beat me once and score. You got to beat me twice. And so, yeah, I'll never forget that game against Darnell up in Cairns. So, yeah, it's just little things. But overall, fear of failure and not wanting to let your teammates down. If you do that every single possession, you probably go a long way to being an okay defender.
You've obviously guarded a lot of, unbelievable players. Who do you think is your hardest you've had to guard? And I'm not throwing Bryce because it's practice, but throughout your whole career, who do you think is the hardest you've had to guard?
Outside of the NBL, Paddy's incredible. The way he sets you up on pin downs and how quick he is in that shot release, then he can take you off the dribble. So I loved guarding Paddy at Boomers camp, just with how he reads the game and gets himself open. Dellavedova is just high basketball IQ, so the way he uses on-ball screens. Teodosic from Serbia, Tony Parker, just the really smart, crafty, high basketball IQ guys I enjoyed. When it comes to, the NBL, there's a heap of really good players, but Kevin Lish, I think, in his prime, just his balance, his change of speed, his change of direction, and the way he shot the ball. So you can guard super quick players to find the right distance. You can guard super quick players who have a good shot. You just got to know your distance and carry your hand. But when you got change of direction, change of speed, the way he did it with his balance, you never really knew what he was going to actually do, whether it was a long two or pull up three, hezzy crossover between the legs, try and get to the ring. So, I thought Lish was as good as it gets when it comes to guarding. You wouldn't let me say Bryce, but Bryce is still number one, and I had to put up with it every day at training.
I can imagine he would have been. That's why I cut him out, because he's your teammate. You must love it year after year when new players come into the league, new big guys, whoever it may be, new guards. It just, you can tell someone what someone's going to do. Like when you get a rebound, don't bring it down. Like Damo's going to sneak baseline and rip it out of your hands. You can say it 48 times during the week in scout, but it still happens. You must love when new guys come into the league that have no idea really who you are. They've seen some tape, they've heard, but it must be like, that must get you excited knowing you're playing against a new guy that's never seen you before.
Yeah, a poor rookie, like after a free throw, knowing you're just going to trap him in that corner, turn them, trap him in the corner, especially like Jesse or Sean or Nick, you straight away like, yeah, let's get him type of thing. Or I used to love trying to pick Nate Jawa whenever we get a rebound. And I didn't get him that often, but when I did, he'd nearly crack me with a back pick the next play and we'd just have a laugh. So, yeah, there's certain players I loved, but I love trying to do it against. Most of them were mates, but, yeah, the rookies, you just eyes kind of light up and think, here we go.
I had a question on my Instagram. Your favourite memory out of your dunk versus Sydney or your block versus New Zealand in the final series? Now, I can't imagine you've had too many dunks, so you must know.
Yeah, I was going to say, I can't remember the blocks, so I have to go with the one of 3, 4 dunks I got my whole career. So I'll definitely go with the dunk. It's funny because right now, last couple of years, I couldn't even jump over a credit card. So occasionally I'll bring like a Wani or a Reese Bag, some of the younger guys, and just show them the clip and say, it's all right, once upon a time. But yeah, I was just that old dude who could barely jump, but got a couple of dunks here and there.
Now, you've obviously spent a lot of time with Jesse and Greg. I'm assuming they're two of your better mates. Obviously, they've shared a lot of your career. I think Jesse's got the same, like 6 championships as well, which is it's unbelievable the numbers that you guys have dished out, and obviously Greg as well. Like those guys obviously would have meant a lot to your career and being able to play with them for so long, and obviously live in Perth altogether.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, so where I live in this suburb, it's a small suburb, and you got Brad Robbins, who was, we're teammates for a while. He's about 1 kilometre away. Greg Hire is about 800 metres away, and Jesse Wagstaff's about 800 metres away. So it's cool to, all grown up well, Brad and I grew up together, and then Jesse and I started our careers together in Perth 11 years ago, and Greg joined us a year later. And now there's that friendship where now our families are all, with the kids, they're all growing up at the same age. So that is special to me when we're at each other's kids' birthday parties and things like that. But yeah, Jesse, he's the biggest nerd you'll ever meet. As a 4.0 student in university, he's got like 4 degrees and still studying. He just lives to study. Yet his dream job would be to assemble flat packs from IKEA. He just loves that. He loves the periodic table. And then Greg is just, provides you with plenty of laughs, a lot of emotion, and he played with passion. But Greg, for example, there's a petrol station not far from here. He put the nozzle in the car, drove off with the nozzle in the car, it came squirting out. I'm like, who is this guy? Like, how is he still surviving? But he definitely provides a smile on your face.
Well, that might. So I just had a funny question. So you can only take one of these on a desert island for whatever, like to live and survive for a week. It's either your wife, Britt, and I'm hoping she's not back there, like whatever, Jesse or Greg. Now, if Greg can't even fill up his car safely, I'm assuming you don't want to take him.
Britt would get mad at me because I'm useless. So I don't know if I want a week of her yelling at me. Thanks, Jesse. He's like a modern day MacGyver, so he'll keep us alive for the week.
That's a safe bet. Mate, that's all I had for you. Like I said, I messaged you, but congrats on an unbelievable career. I'm no doubt you'll be a Hall of Famer once it's all said and done, and your jersey will be up in RAC Arena. But unbelievable career, not just in Australia, not just in the NBL, but for Australia as well. And everything you've done, I don't think many people are going to tick off those numbers. So,
no, thanks for that coming from you. That means a lot. Obviously, we have had a lot of battles over a lot of years, and I've always enjoyed playing against you because I respect the way you play and how you conduct yourself. And you talked about coaching. I can't wait to see which team you're a head coach for down the track. But enjoy the next 10 years playing out there in the NBL, and I'll merely cut you from the sideline unless you're playing against the Wildcats.
Well, you scared me off coaching now after the test. So I might have to go become a real estate agent too. It sounds like a bit of fun, but
we're horrible. I know.
But yeah, mate, like I said, awesome. Thanks. I'm sure you've been busy and whatnot, but on behalf of everyone in the NBL and in Australia, mate, congrats on an unbelievable career. And we'll catch you soon. We'll wave to Maggie when Dad's sitting next to her in RAC Arena.
Thank you, Martin, from the Perth Wildcats. Thanks, mate. Thanks to everyone in the NBL. I love it. Love everyone involved. Cheers.